and thank you for joining us for another episode of our podcast, Disrupting the Dominoes. I'm Arlene Lemus, the CEO of PAVE Prevention, and Disrupting the Dominoes means disrupting the dominoes of violence. I'm super excited about our next guest. Really feel strongly enough to call him my friend. I am so very proud of him and the work that he is doing and the partnership that we have developed. Without any further ado here, I would really like to introduce Mr. Elliot Jones. Elliot, join us.
No, so happy to be here, Arlene. And yes, we are friends. We have been on this journey a little bit together. So really happy to share about it and talk and just reconnect.
Yeah. So Elliot, you and the work that you're doing and the city of Oakland and macro have really just become a part of my DNA. We really have been so excited to join you on this journey. And I can't wait till our viewers and our listeners get to hear more about what you're doing. So first and foremost, Elliot, please just share with us a little bit about who you are and how you made your way to macro. And please tell us what macro stands for.
No, absolutely. First and foremost, I am Elliot Jones. I am the program manager of the Mobile Assistance Community Responders of Oakland, more affectionately known as Macro. Macro is an alternative response program within the Oakland Fire Department that aims to address low acuity quality of life calls that may be of a mental health in nature. And we've been in service for over 1 year, and thankfully we were given the opportunity to work with PAVE Prevention on our training to ensure that our responders were ready to hit the streets and stay as safe as possible. How I got here is a little bit of luck, a lot of work for when the opportunity was correct, and then it just all came together. If you would ask me 10 years ago if I would be doing this or sitting here, I probably would have looked at you crazy, but it seems like the work that I've done throughout my life has led to this. I'm a lifelong Oaklander. My mother worked for the city of Oakland for years, so I grew up in and around the city functions and in the communities. And throughout the work that I did pretty much everywhere else but Oakland, when I did come home and learned about alternative response and the groundswell of support behind the macro program through a chance encounter, I was able to, the division lead, Mrs. Venus Ward Ratliff, who is a force in her own right. And we talked, and she felt that I would be the perfect fit for this job. And while it has been a struggle, I have never, ever felt that I was doing something that I should be doing, where I should be doing it, with everything that I have, more so than this position and this opportunity to really serve. And I think that's something that many people get away from, is service. I think we're all in the process of trying just to work and earn, which is a part, but we do have to serve if we want to see things change. And Oakland has no shortage of problems and challenges, but truthfully, a decades-long approach to demanding and wanting change from our public safety apparatus has led to the establishment of macro. And I can say that our responders lived up to that task. And in our first year, 12 months, day to day, we made over 12,000 contacts to truly disrupt the current practice of public safety, which usually heavily relies on policing to address those that are dealing with a mental health challenge or that may be unhoused. So it is validating that we made it a year, but I don't think we were just here for the year. We're here for the long haul.
No, I think on the contrary, you're there for the long haul. And I think now, as we'll discuss, you are being held up as a model on what a successful responder program looks like. So I applaud you. I applaud the responders. And I'll share with you, Elliot, one of the biggest things that stood out with me when I landed into that first day of macro training is it felt like how I feel about my city of Chicago. I feel so connected to it and thankful for what the city has given me, that I want it to be better. And I feel like that's how everyone who came to that initial Oakland macro responder training, you were so committed to your communities. You, as a leader, led by example, you were so committed to what you want Oakland to look like. And all your responders came with so much empathy and so much energy to like, man, we want to see this be super successful. So that I just want to share that with you, that stood out from day one.
Thank you. One thing I'll say, we hired our responders.
Yes,
are some of the best in the business, and I'll take them over anything. They're the ones that show up every day. They're the ones that are in the field right now doing what they can to serve. And macro really was modeled, once it came to the fire department, on three pillar principles: empathy, service, community. And truly, our responders embody that every day. They approach every situation with empathy. They do what they can to provide a service, no matter how big or small. And then finally, they try to connect people to the programs that are available. I think every city, and Oakland is no exception, there is a swath of organizations, whether they be a part of government or not, that are trying hard to help. And many times they've been doing so in obscurity. And what we have tried to do at Macro is say, hey, we're going to work with everybody. If you're there to help, we're going to get you the people for you to help. And really that manifests through our responders taking initiative to try again. One thing we learned in that first year, that over 45% of everybody that we talk to is somebody we talked to before. And that shows how many repeat calls that our public safety, the traditional public safety apparatus, police and fire and medical, often do with those that are unhoused or otherwise that need repeated care, rely on these systems for their primary care. Macro has been able to come and disrupt that and try to take that burden off of these other services that really aren't designed that way. So I think that there's a sense of pride that we all have as a part of this program, and the responsibility that our responders have to do the right thing and to make the right connection and truly be there for the person that we show up for. It's just truly remarkable. And I am often left in awe, and believe it or not, speechless by the interactions that they have. And it's hard to make me speechless.
Yeah, exactly. We know that also from some of our assessments that their empathy scores were off the charts. Your group, that initial group, the bar is incredibly high with them. They were a great group to work with. So let's just take a step back a little bit. We're enjoying the success. You are enjoying the success of Macro and very proud of your responders. But let's not lose sight of kind of where this program came from and where our country, where our cities were when this initiative was first being thrown around and talked about. And what were we looking for? Why did this come about? Could you share a little bit more about how that reimagining public safety force was started and why it was even started?
I would say that nationally, we saw an amazing trend in these programs picking up after the unfortunate incident with George Floyd in Minneapolis and his murder. So this really Macro and many alternative response programs that have fairly recently started came out of the uprest of, I believe it was the summer of 2019 into 2020, with tragedies that included Michael Brown and George Floyd and many other people. In Oakland, there had always been a desire for reimagining public safety. And in 2019, it was decided that there should be research done to determine if alternative response would even work in Oakland. I find that funny now that you had to research that when it should have been, let's try it. And I recently came back from a conference in DC put on by Georgetown University and NYU and their respective departments that study this, that brought together alternative response programs from all over the nation together. It was really a great opportunity to learn from other groups that have been established for many years that are still also evolving and changing. And I truly think that that's the beauty of alternative response, that we can be dynamic. The mission can change, it can grow, it can evolve, when most of the time our police and fire assets, the traditional public safety, is very set in stone. They have clear missions, and they have maybe been misused and overused
Yeah.
over decades where it became commonplace, but I think alternative response allows those programs to get back to specialization. And if we can keep our fire apparatuses in the station ready for an emergency, or our officers on the beat to focus on violent crime or more organized crime, then I really think we're doing the right thing, because we can still put service first, and we aren't pulled in the direction of some of these other entities that are required by law to respond to emergencies.
Mm.
So I am very fortunate that a lot of the groundwork was done before I got into Oakland, or I got into the city of Oakland, because there were community groups, many that would never normally get along, all came together to demand that this needs to happen, that there needs to be investment in alternative response, and that a program needed to pop up in Oakland. So they decided on an 18-month pilot program. And really at the 25th hour, it was given to the fire department, which I still think was a brilliant stroke by our city council. Fire department has the history being founded in 1869. It serves every day. They have been there for fires. They show up for medical. They know what it means. So being able to stand on the shoulders that 150 plus years of experience is critical for our success. I'm grateful every day that decision was made, because now I can lean on the expertise of people that have been doing this work for 20, 30 years. And we've been able to establish what alternative response can do in Oakland. But I must say that one department's efforts won't solve this. There needs to be further examination of how alternative response can work for other departments, other divisions. There should be no shortage of non-sworn folks that can go out there and help, and still feel that they're a part of, whether it be the fire department, police department, or otherwise, because there, as I've learned from my friends in Portland, Oregon, there's no shortage of crisis, there's no shortage of work. And if we all do our part, it gets a little bit more manageable.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks. Thank you for sharing that, Elliot. So I think you touched upon macro being housed within the fire department. And I think that's a huge reason for its success. I think for people who are hardliners I'll just use the defund the police side of the argument, the hardliners there, having the responder program fall under the fire department, it alleviates some of that stress or anger. And then those who don't want it completely community-based and want it to have some structure on maybe the far left of the argument, they're happy because it's not in the police, but it does have structure. It does have all those things. So I think, in my opinion, having researched many responder programs now because of our relationship with macro, I think this is the beauty of it, to tell you the truth. Community organization born, embraced by the city council, funded, housed under the fire department, and then the type of innovative training you gave your responders. I think this is the secret of success. And I tell everybody that'll listen to me about it.
And I'll even add, I think that that doesn't mean, and thank you for all of that, that doesn't mean that we should wipe our hands on any other opportunities. I still think there's an opportunity for community-based responder programs. There's still an opportunity for other departments to look into this. In Oakland, we have the Department of Violence Prevention. We have our homeless services that all have outreach programs. And the more of us that are out there trying and making these connections and keeping calls away from our emergency service providers is critical. I know that there's some CBOs in Oakland that are also trying to build up their responder staff. And it's great that instead of having to navigate the whole city public safety, fire, police apparatus, they could just call me and say, hey, we're ready to function. If you guys ever have a call that fits in this and you think we can handle it, send it to us. Great. We want that. We want people to feel that they can get involved. Macro has while dynamic and broad, it's still very specific, our mandate. So I love when I hear from other groups that they're ready to jump in. I just caution them, you don't have to go head first. You can dip your toe, you can figure it out, and slow and steady wins the race. And I think I'll borrow from a lesson from PAVE prevention. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So as we slow down and really think about how we engage and support those that are in need, It doesn't have to be as we have come to expect when police and fire show up, that there is a result. Things take time. And sometimes you have to take multiple bites at the apple or even get a second apple before something is truly effective. And I really am so proud of our responder force because they have proven this, and their capabilities to learn the city, to show up every day for those in need inspires me. And I think it has gone on to inspire others in this city to say, we do have a role to play as well. And we're going to find out how we fit into this giant puzzle of addressing the challenges of Oakland.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you guys have done a fantastic job there. And I think you have inspired your city, if not your state and the country, to tell you the truth, Elliot. I think you're inspiring people with your program every day. So I'll share a little bit on how we stumbled into partnering with Macro, becoming a training partner. We actually reached out. I was actually contacted by a former athlete that I coached when I was coaching the national team, who is now a chief of fire for you in the Oakland Fire Department. And she said, Coach, I see what you're doing on social media. I hear what you're doing. I hear the type of training you're doing. Will you take a meeting? I have a group of peers and friends that would love to hear about what you're doing. So I said, sure, absolutely. So here I am talking to female leadership in the SWAT program there, female leadership in the fire department, female leadership in the EMT department there. And so I'm just telling them what PAVE does, hoping to make their departments safer, more cohesive, better communication, less turnover, which is what PAVE does in businesses and corporations. And then Vina was there and she said, wait a minute, you got to take a call with my Macro people tomorrow, because it seems like you are filling 8 out of the 10 of our areas of focus for our academy, for our Macro training. It was just a stroke of luck. And really, it was synergy from day one, I will have to say, with you, Elliot. I hope you saw it the same way.
No, totally did see it the same way. And really another shout out to Chief Linda Buell, this amazing person, just all around it. She helped support the hiring. She was on our hiring panels, has always been an ear when it's needed. And really just grateful to have her and many other leaders within the department who saw the promise and the possibility of Macro. Yeah, we really did hit it off on day one. And what we saw was critical was that you could prepare our team to be prepared for what is truly unpreparable. It is like martial arts training. It is like some of what I remember in past jobs working with folks in a military service, that you have to prepare. And in running scenarios when we really had no experience of what we could run into, challenging the team to be imaginative of what could happen and to do these steps so that we can avoid potentially what could happen one day. And I think the inevitability of something going wrong on the street is something that we all live with in the public safety world and emergency services world. And so I'm grateful for the training, but there is a need for constant training. There is a need for doubling down and making this more specific. And I look forward to being able to call you about our next academy and a refresher academy and building this into what we do, because now we have the scenarios. Now we understand a little bit more after a year and change what to expect. And no two instances are the same. And I am grateful that we were able to spend that time early on, and really you all were stepping into an unknown with us, and our team bought in from the first day. Some we had to drag along a little bit more than others, but when they all came together and they all finally understand that this is going to make and help ensure our safety and our teammates' safety in the streets, it made it very clear of how critical this training was. And I often talk about PAVE to other groups that, how'd you get ready? What was this? You could have, I've heard last few weeks of people that had a 2.5 month academy or a 2-month academy. And I'm like, that's great. We didn't have the luxury of that time. And what we did was start the process, and we will come up with a more robust training scenario plan moving forward. But this was really gave us the confidence that we could go out into Oakland and do this work. And no 2 days are the same. I'm trying to think back on narratives recently where the training came into play. And it's very challenging being on there on the street with the elements of anything that could happen. But when you're slow, when you keep seeing safety first, when you're looking out for your teammate, it allows you to go far and to do the right thing. And really, I think of moments when we were first rolling out and I would roll out with the team. They've since said, I don't get to roll out with them anymore. And they didn't, you can't pull, don't park here. Don't do that. Don't get out the car. What are you doing? And so I went through the training too. So I appreciated that my team was really constantly reminding that, constantly keeping it in mind. And again, it is a testament to the responders, but also to the training that it's still valuable to them and they still remember it. And yeah, we're grateful for you every day, because that graduation was almost the last step we had to do to get them ready to go. And they were ready to go after that.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Elliot. It was very rewarding for us. It really was. Someone once said to me, someone who I had met like once, that they felt a part of me winning the medal, right? Like they felt a part of me winning a gold medal because we had been in the same circles. And I thought it was strange, but it hit home for me with with my feelings towards macro, which is that I feel a little bit of connection and ownership and rooting for you and proud of you and really a part of the team there. Thank you for the kind words on PAVE. I have a couple questions for you because your team is now putting together some incredible statistics. The last I looked, you guys are responding to upward of 1,000 incidents a month, for really serving vulnerable populations and the BIPOC population that may not have been treated by these resources in the way that you guys are treating them. Do you want to share anything about the community that you seem to be serving with the responder program?
I think I would first just talk about how our response works. Initially, because we were working on it, and what people understand is that when you start these programs, it's not just you're starting in a vacuum. You have to be able to work with the police assets and the fire assets, the medical assets, the dispatching aspects, all these different programs that are in divisions that are working together to ensure that emergency response happens in your city. So while we were ready to go, we still had to work to get our dispatch partners up and running. So through training and discussion, we were able to start dispatching approximately 6 months after we started taking calls. This was a huge change in what we do. And as more dispatches have come in, we've seen the pullback on our on-view activities relatively consistently. When I say on-view, is we started the program with the idea we should identify calls before they become a call into the 911 system. So wellness checks, sleeper checks on mostly our unhoused community, because that's the calls that come in and clog up the system, where somebody doesn't need a police officer, but they just need someone to come and check on them. As we have seen our dispatches increase and we prepare to eventually launch a number, those calls usually take more time. You're in response, you're having to get there. It almost takes about 10, 15 minutes for us to arrive on scene. In average incident times, call times take about 18 minutes from on scene to when we can clear the call. So the way that this is worked initially was that we were doing it all on our own, but now the community is starting to get wind. They're reaching out more, they're asking for support, and the vast majority of these calls are coming from a place of concern. I'm happy to say that Oakland has a huge heart, and mostly when they reach out looking for support, it's because they care. And so we're balancing the needs of those that are vulnerable and in the street with those that are calling because maybe somebody's in front of their business or having an episode inside their business or sleeping in their carport. There's 1,000 different call types, but we do expect that as we get more teams, we'll be able to handle more calls and probably get back to that 1,000 a month average. Currently, the last couple of months, we've been a hair under it, but the dispatches have picked up significantly. And we expect that trend to continue into the summer. But one thing is always true, that we show up with in mind that we're there to serve more often than not the person you're calling on. And that's taken some education, a lot of reinforcing to the public. We often hear, why didn't you just move them? Come and move them. A couple things. One, that's another department. That's homeless services, who have a very difficult job. They have a very difficult job. And then there is macro. And when macro comes, we're there to try to get to know the person, to try to make a connection, assess what's going on, and come up with a care plan that they can be a part of. Nothing in macro is forced. If you're thirsty and I offer you a bottle of water, you don't have to take it if you don't want it. You don't have to take a blanket if you're cold. But we feel if we are offering these things, that we're staving off any desperation and establishing trust. And as I said earlier, because we regularly see people multiple times, eventually you'll give us the okay that you're ready for something different, that you'd like to explore housing, you'd like to explore other programs. And if you've had a bad experience somewhere and we run into you again and you say, that didn't work for me, well, we'll get down and we'll try to find something else, because that isn't a deterrent for us. You know, it may end up that we refer less people to that organization, but we're doing what we can to get you to where you're comfortable with and where you'll be supported. And I'm really proud about that. And it's not always so easy. We're dealing with sometimes decades of trauma that people have faced in accessing support services. So the team is patient beyond measure, and they are committed as much as any other public safety professional in the city. And I think over time, Oakland will start to see a change of understanding that this can be step one, and anything else that has to escalate beyond it, that is for those other forces. I've often said to people, there may be a point in time when you call 911 and instead of police, fire, medical, it's macro, medical, fire, police. And I know when we get to that point, who knows if I'll be in this seat, but it'll truly show a shift in the mindset of what we think we need within the city. And again, I'm already hearing it out in the community. I was out to just having breakfast by myself a few weeks ago, or earlier this week, wearing a macro shirt, and a couple from across the table was like, "You're a macro? Let me tell you." And they were very happy.
Awesome. That's awesome.
It just made me smile. And I told them, I'll tell the responders, they're the ones out there doing it. I'm just trying to be the buffer between them and everything else. But it is remarkable the work that they've been able to do to establish themselves in a year. And we often get asked, why aren't you guys advertising? Why aren't you guys doing this? And while some groups may think it's important to go out there and wave a flag, we have taken the approach that we're going to get to work. We're going to show you. And the more you see it, the more you'll expect it, the more it'll become a part of the fabric, the tapestry that is first response for the city. And that is truly our goal. And we're well on our way.
Yeah. Yes, you are. So in your impact reports, which now I think you guys are doing even monthly, you put a couple stories in there too. You put a couple recaps of incidents. One of them that I read had the macro responders showing up at a restaurant where a person was refusing to leave. Mm-hmm. And it was a kind of an over 30 to 40 minute kind of interaction, but the macro responders de-escalated the situation, moved the person outside, stayed with him for 10 minutes till he felt more comfortable and relaxed, and then left. It's just amazing that the police didn't have to come to that event. It's just incredible. And then there was another story where the police were called first, but police stepped back and called in macro to come in and take over. That's where we want to be, right? When you say macro medical police, where police are coming in and saying, hey, this isn't for us. Macro, we need to call macro for this.
Absolutely. And I think I'll always talk about our police and fire, not interchangeably, very closely related. They're specialized forces. They're there for very specific reasons. And they're also the first ones that kind of know when this is beyond their scope. So we're happy that we have a good working relationship with the officers and our firefighters in the field, because they know when something is not for them. We recently had an interaction with our fire department. where we were called on scene. And as we got there, the fire truck was already there, the fire engine. We talked to them for a little bit. It looked like there had been a head injury, which they would have to take the lead on and potentially call an ambulance because head injuries are very tricky. But it turned out that the individual did not require that level of service. They immediately called back. We weren't even 3 blocks away for the crew to come back. We turned around, we released the engine, and we helped this individual get where they needed to go because it truly didn't require the other response. That was great. And often we do see things where we have to interface with PD and we give them a kind of a breakdown of what's happening. If somebody is being violent, if there's threats are made, of course, that's beyond our scope. But also if we need to access other teams that are more crisis related for 5150s or otherwise, that has to happen through PD. But to avoid situations from getting out of hand, a warm handoff where we can explain the situation, explain what's going on. There was something as recent as last night with an individual expressing that they were going to harm themselves. A team got there, spoke to the individual, asked if we had their permission to reach out to some mental health service providers to see if we could get them hooked up. Something, his insurance wasn't there and the group was not going to come. So we were able to escalate this to the crisis team through PD, talk to the individual, say, hey, what were you going to hurt yourself with? He said this, it was a small piece of glass. And I said, we really would prefer if you didn't have that on you when PD comes. So would you willingly hand it over to us? The individual handed it over. PD came. We gave them the heads up. I don't believe they even engaged with the individual, maybe briefly, but then they called for the crisis team. And then the crisis team came and truly was able to address their needs. And I'm like, when it all works like that, it's perfect. And of course, they're still in the process. Maybe one day they wouldn't even have to be because that officer could have been doing 1,000 other things. But it's great to see that within these first 18 months that it's slowly coming together. And I think that's the right pace. I don't think that you can mandate things or expect things to happen quickly. These are all human beings, whether it's the person in need, the reporting party, or our friends in the police and fire service. They all need time to adjust, and it's slowly getting there. And I'm just grateful that we are earning the trust of not only those other services, but also all of Oakland.
I hope that you see yourself, and macro, but I'm going to say that you guys are disrupting the dominoes. You are disrupting the dominoes of violence. I would go out on a limb here and say that the majority of people that you are attending to in your macro calls, they are dealing with violence or have dealt with violence that may have brought them to the place where they need you or where you're crossing paths. So you are disrupting the dominoes, and macro is disrupting the dominoes by treating people with dignity, getting them the resources that they may need, and just bringing a support, a response in a more humane way. So with that said, that you are truly disrupting the dominoes of violence, Mr. Elliott, with your program. If you could speak to anyone, one person, one group that could really change or you feel could make a difference in violence prevention and helping people heal from violence, who would that person be?
I think it's difficult when you think of one person. I think there's a lot in government where they think one person, one this, one that. And really, even in life, it's easy to put our emphasis and focus on one person. I think Oakland, it's fortunate enough, we have a violence prevention department. And we're separate for reasons. But I'm grateful that they're even in existence. And I find it, I wish I could talk to the mayor to simply say it's, even with the budget deficit, we shouldn't be detracting from these programs that are trying to gain a foothold, that are focused on addressing these things from a holistic point. We shouldn't be pulling away from what we know would be effective, more support for parks, more support for community-based organizations. And while we work in a very gray space, it's very clear what we're there to do. They have a much harder job. As one of them told me, as we were talking about data, he said, how can I put on paper that I prevented a murder? And I chewed on that for a while. And I was like, yeah, that's unfair. And it's unfair to even think that there would be a clear stat line for that. So I would just I'd like to talk to our mayor and others and just say, let's budget deficits are a thing. I get it. It's tough. That's a much broader conversation for another time. But at some point, you have to put your flag in the sand, your foot down, whatever the metaphor will be, and say, we are going to ensure that this is a part of the city moving forward. And it's not going to be on the whims of the budget or even the public. Like, this has to work.
Right.
Have to find a way. And there's innovative ways that you can do it. The department can be essentially a fiscal response sponsor of community-based organizations that are doing it. More of us need to get involved in it. But my personal opinion that it does come down to opportunity and options. And if people are able to find high quality paying jobs, if people are able to get health care and child care and meet their basic needs, we won't see this almost, I don't want to say explosion, but this increase of violent crimes and property crimes that seem to be really peppering the news. And I also am reading the data and looking, and things are actually down across the border.
Right. Yeah.
Across the spectrum. The numbers are actually down, but it doesn't feel that way. That's the problem. But I think that what we are trying to do, especially when it comes to criminality and things like that, is we can address the stuff that is truly not that in nature. It does free up those other assets to then refocus on that. And all of us across the board have to be willing to shift and change, with the exception of our fire service. They have to do exactly what they're doing. But the rest of us have to be able to shift and change and go back to the drawing board. And it shouldn't be an assault on our character, and we shouldn't take it personally. It's just what's required of the times. And I will say that our friends in PD have an impossible job, and they've had for years because they've been asked to do so much. But hopefully programs like Macro, DVP, Parks, as they continue to do their part, there can be a refocusing of our law enforcement assets to truly address the more severe. We can be on the ground and deal with the people, but we're going to need them to do the hard work of this organized lawlessness that is not widespread, and it's not the Wild West. It's all very targeted, and that's their job to figure that out. It's not on us. And we're also grateful that they're there to protect our team, just in case. Knock on wood, it never comes to that, but when in doubt, they're there for everybody. So we want to keep them in that posture and let us deal with the individual having a rough day.
Yeah. I think I shared with you, I have several family members in law enforcement. We need them, as you say. There's a role for them to play, and they're a key component to public safety for sure.
And I know in Oakland, there's talk of, if you want to get somewhere, you have to start somewhere. So, you can want a different world where none of these challenges are present. But if you want to get there, you're going to have to walk through a bunch of mud to get there. And it's going to be hard work, and it may be thankless. It may feel at times that you're not going to do it. But I think Macro is a great example that with the right will, with the right coming together of people, that you can plant this seed, and it's on us to feed it and germinate it and to grow it. But it doesn't have to be the only seed you plant. I think that in the city, a lot of groups have felt this is it. And I've tried to tell them, no, you can do 10 of these. More can do it. And I think cities like Chicago, and I met 2 people from Chicago that are desperately trying to bring alternative response programs to the forefront. I met someone from DC who's, I think you guys are the model that best fits us. Yeah. I look personally to our friends down in Albuquerque, New Mexico, who have a staff size of 150, which I'm like, man, I can't wait for that day. Our friends at Denver, who have figured out the dispatching piece, which is probably the most critical piece for all public safety and reimagining efforts. And then the OG program that is Cahoots, been around for 30 years, who they're going through a seismic shift over there, a 30-year association with PD, and now they're being asked to move their activities into fire. So there are monumental programs that have been doing great work for many years, and they're still having to shift and grow and adapt. And I think that's a lesson that all public safety can learn from.
Yeah, that is a perfect way to describe it, that we do have to morph, we do have to shift, we do have to learn. Every day is different, my friend, every day. Elliot, this has been an incredible conversation. I'm so happy that our listeners and our viewers will be able to hear about the great stuff that you are doing and your team is doing in Oakland. Again, very proud of you. Happy to call you my friend, proud to call you my friend. And just really thanks for making time for us today.
Hey, whenever you need me, Arlene, I'll be here. I owe you some phone calls this summer to figure out this next academy. So thank you so much for everything, and we'll be in touch soon.
Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. This has been another episode of Disrupting the Dominoes of Violence. Subscribe and follow the great successes of Elliot and the macro team in Oakland. Thank you, everyone.